Welcome back everybody to Devlog 6 of my N64/PS1 era inspired adventure game that I'm making in the Unreal Engine. Today I want to start with kind of a little bit of a different devlog, I guess, a little bit of a different start. But if you haven't seen any of the previous devlogs, go check those out. The most recent previous devlog focused on the beginnings of implementing combat into the game, and we're going to do some more of that in a future devlog as well and really polish and fine-tune that combat system so we have a really cool, fluid combat system that we can use and build upon. But today I wanted to start by talking about a few things. First off, I just want to say thank you so much for the reception to the videos. I recorded devlogs 1 to 4 pretty much before I hadn't even shown the world anything to do with the game really. It was pretty much in a vacuum, and then I started putting things on Twitter and then I started releasing the devlogs on YouTube. And then I got really sick in the middle of making devlog 5. But you've all just been so supportive and so great in the comments, so I just want to say thank you so much for that. So today, I wanted to actually pick up on a few common questions and a few common queries and answer those in a video so people can kind of refer to this, and if you see anyone commenting on a video about a specific thing, you can go, oh, go watch the start of Devlog 6, Matt talks about it there, sort of thing. So that's what we're going to do right now. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was the point around the 4 arms. I've seen this pop up a couple of times in a few different ways on different platforms, but the main question or the main query seems to be, what are you going to do with the 4 arms? Have you thought about it? Because right now you've got a sword and a shield that could be done with 2 arms. I get that. There's a lot of things I've thought about, and there's a lot of things that I think later down the road when we start looking at animation and polish and different weaponry and things like that, we'll be able to create some really cool things with those 4 arms. Like maybe we'll give our characters staffs, staves, staffs, whatever you want to call them, to use. These could be used for combat. They could be maybe something you have to pick up, and maybe they are limited time weapons or something like that. Lots of really cool ideas you could do with that. Maybe he just goes all out crazy swordsman and has a sword in every single hand, on every single arm, maybe that's what he does. Maybe he's some crazy guy who just does that. We don't know. But the other thing is, I talked about at the end of the last devlog, is that you're going to unlock an arm cannon, and this thing is going to be so heavy and so weighty, and that's something I want to get across in the animations, is that you really need all 4 arms to do this. You're using 2 of your arms just to balance it, while your other 2 arms are actually swallowed by this thing when it manifests over your arm when you choose to use it. And I think that'll be a really interesting weapon to use. And I actually think of it a little bit like the Darksaber in Mandalorian, a similar approach to this weapon where it's this huge manifested arm cannon that is just so heavy and cumbersome to use is kind of the approach I'll take with that. Hopefully that answers some of the questions around the 4 arms a little bit. The idea of me using it currently just the sword and the shields, that isn't just me being like, oh, this is all the character will have, or this is what the character will have full stop. You may not even start with this loadout. There may be different things that you get and expand upon during your journey. And I think a lot of that will develop. I'm only like a month or 2 into the development of this game. Over time, it's going to look so different that I wouldn't worry too much about it. I know it's a great point to bring up, though. I have also thought about, with animations, maybe he can use those 2 lower arms to help almost like scramble up and clamber a lot more and look almost more spider-like in the way he moves vertically. And that would be really cool. I think some of the inspiration for that could come from Destiny 2 with the race called the Fallen, or the Elixni. They have 4 arms as well. And some of those guys climb on walls and do lots of really cool things with their use of the 4 arms as well. And I think, always looking out for other uses of this and being inspired by it is really important to me. Okay, so I rambled on a little bit for quite a while there, but let me talk about another thing that a few people have mentioned, which are the animations. Some people have liked them, some people don't like them. Overall, the animations in the game right now are all temporary. Some may stay in a somewhat nebulous way. They might be altered a lot, but it's very, very, very likely every animation you've currently seen in the game will change at some point down the road. Because right now, the animations are a mix of either very quickly hand keyframe things by me, or me doing like a mix of like a mixamo animation overlaid with like keyframe animations laid onto a new skeleton. There's a bunch of complicated stuff happening for the animations, but I think they look fine. They're doing the job of displaying the features that I'm implementing into the game in the correct way. They're not polished, they're not perfect, they don't fully do what I want them to do in terms of the style that I'm going for, but they work. And I think a really good example of that is what I just did in the previous devlog with the combat animations, where I actually made it so that you only swing your right main arm when you're swinging your sword. It looks really cool when you're running, because all of the running animation, every other limb is still that running animation, or the walking animation or whatever, and then you're slashing with the sword. The main goal there is kind of Twilight Princess, as kind of a really good example, because in a lot of Zelda games, you can't really move and slash at the same time. It's just not a thing. But in Twilight Princess, because of, you know, I guess maybe it was because they made it for the Wii, but it was a GameCube game, right? So in that game, you can walk along and slash the sword at the same time. And I want to be able to do that in this game. But I also still want to have those really cool locked down, really well thought out animations for when you're standing still, or when you're in low movement or slow movement. I want you to transition into a very strong, powerful stance and get into combat. And that's very different, I think, to what we have now, but the functionality of swinging the sword is actually all I need right now. I don't need it to look good and be this polished animation, because we're still so early days. That was Devlog 5 I was doing that stuff in. By Devlog 50, we may have some sort of polished animations, but right now, it's about building the features and making the game feel good from a gameplay standpoint and of just the feel of it, and then we'll really start polishing those animations and all the other stuff around that. You know, things like the UI, button prompts, menus, all of that will happen way down the road when we have something we're really happy with. And that's it for the Q&A sort of section at the start of the devlog. Hopefully that all makes sense and I didn't just seem like I was rambling on or anything, because I actually think the feedback I've gotten from you all in the comments has been great, and I like the discussions. I just felt like these 2 points kind of bared repeating a little bit more in the video rather than me just responding to people in the comments. This is also going to be a really long devlog series. It's not just going to be a few episodes. This is going to go on for a really long time, I hope anyway. So that means that what you're seeing now is going to look vastly different in, you know, a few years' time. I'm saying a few years. I don't know how long the game's going to take to make, but next, get back into the engine, focus on getting some more work done on kind of implementing where I want the game to go now. I think I'm going to do some creative stuff in this devlog and just kind of relax into it a little bit, and then we'll revisit the combat system, add things like the health system, damage system, and all of that a little bit more. I also want to do a thing where when you hit an enemy, they flash a color and stuff like that, so you can tell that they're, you know, being impacted and stuff. There's a bunch of other things I want to add. That'll all happen between now and said devlog 12, and then maybe, yeah, after another 6 episodes, we'll do another one of these Q&As, and I'll gather up some of the most commented things, and I'll answer those in a video. But anyway, let's jump into the main meat and potatoes of the devlog. Okay, back in Blender for the first time in a few devlogs, and what we're going to do right now is we're just going to block out all of the main area for the planet. It's going to look humongous compared to the small little prototype area that we've been in, and you can see I'm running around right now. It is massive. We'll get to it, don't worry. We'll work on it. There's a reason in my madness for why it is the size it is and the way it is. So this is also the first time I've imported the alien ruins from Devlog 3 in Engine, so I'm just getting all the materials for those set up, making sure all the emissives work and all of that sort of stuff. Back into Blender again. This is a very quick time lapse. You'll see why. A lot more me showcasing rather than, you know, going through all the minutiae this time. But this is me just building out the block out so I can start getting a sense of the scale, the feel, and also one thing that's really important for me is view, how the world is portrayed to the player and what you see when you first step into this world. That's really, really important to me. Similarly to Breath of the Wild, when you first come out of the Shrine of Resurrection, you see Hyrule before you. I very much want all of the planets to have that sort of feel. So this is my map that I've just made, painting over, so let's talk more about that with PastMat. Hello, PastMat here. You just saw me doing a bunch of things, including importing the alien ruins here into the engine. More on this later in the episode, but I want to talk about this that you just saw me drawing. So obviously, this is kind of a very generalized map of the first planet. I want to talk about each different level and what they mean. So let me hide everything and let's start with this. So this is our core area of where all other subzones and splinter areas will come off from. It's also where you'll enter the dungeon. It's also the first place you'll enter from what I'm referring to as the crash site, but more on that later. You can see it's pretty simple, but there are some more different zones and different areas and different layers, and there'll probably be a lot more than this when I actually start mapping it out properly, because in Blender right now, this is just a very, very basic, very basic, what am I doing? Just block out, just so we can kind of get an idea of where things are, what the scale's going to be, because we need a lot of space here to hide all these different things, and I want to do a lot of sort of hidden little lore areas and secrets and all this sort of stuff, so I need quite a lot of space. I'm sure a lot of people are worrying how large this is. Don't worry, there is a solution, and you've been looking at it since Devlog 1, I just haven't talked about it. More on that later. So, this is the area where we've been prototyping in, and you can see it's pretty small compared to everything else, right? Considering how large that has been. So we need to figure out ways of detailing and getting all of this sort of detail into these smaller areas, and how that's going to overlap and things like that, and how we can use Unreal's level of detail system and a bunch of other things to make this kind of work in the way we want to. But yeah, this is pretty small. It's a pretty small area, and you're not really going to do much here. You're going to be here very briefly. There's going to be maybe one or two enemies. You're going to collect a couple of things, and that's it. The main stuff is in this central area. But you have other offshoots, like up here, that are going to be similar to this. So if we go back over here to Photoshop, we've got the dungeon over here, but we've also got these subzones. Now, this one up here, let me make a new layer and just draw with the black brush. So right here, this is that prototype area I just showed you. So all the other blue, kind of this royal blue color that you see around the edges, are similar sizes. You'll do a few things in there, and that'll be it. There's probably I've talked about it in previous devlogs, but you're going to need to collect a number of shards to get into the dungeon. It's mixing exploration with those games like Banjo-Kazooie, where you have to go and collect different jiggies. You know, mixing a collectible game with a exploration game, with an adventure game, and mixing it all into these huge worlds that you explore. So again, you have these. This over here is actually going to have nothing in it. This is where you spawn. This is your crash site. You'll do a little bit of climbing. You'll learn a little bit of climbing and moving around, and then you'll come out of here, and the first view you're going to see is straight across here, looking at that dungeon, and this whole open level that you see here. This is what you're going to see straight away. And that's really important to me. I want you to experience this and get this scope of this area really quickly. When you're in here, there's a lot of different ways to go. These are the paths. You can choose many other different paths. This whole thing could be yellow. But the main goal here will be to go around and collect the shards. You could go straight to the dungeon if you wanted to. You could go from here to the dungeon and find out that you need 15 shards or however many shards to unlock it. But you can also just go around and explore and collect them just off the bat. You've got areas here where you'll have pathways over and pathways under. And of course, this is this is the largest of these subzones, I'm calling them. And this is actually going to be, if you imagine a huge crevice in the middle of the sea, and it just drops off like a sheer drop, and you just see a huge expanse out in front of you. That's what this is going to be. One of those sort of ocean ledges. But you may look at this and think, well, this central section's really interconnected. There's loads of different places you can go and do lots of different things. You could go around and, explore. It's huge, though. Again, more on that later, and how we're going to navigate and get around this. How are we going to connect to these? If we go up into here and we're at that little coral tree that we've been jumping around on the pond and stuff and practicing in the prototype level, do we then have to just walk all the way back out again? Seems quite boring. Seems quite redundant, even, to keep having to do that. So that's why I've created what I'm referring to as the connections. These areas will also have shards in them. They'll also have secrets, cool, really unique looking areas, and they're all over the place. The best analogy I can think of for these are like the grottos in Zelda, where you go down a hole and you go to these things. But in this game, in this world, you can go straight into these connections and explore them, and then end up in one of these subzones, explore one of the subzones which are larger, have more of a theme to them, more detail to them, and then you could go through some connections again, and then you back out into the open world. You could come through another smaller connection that leads you up, and then that could put you back in here, and you've made like a full loop. But maybe you're going to explore and find new things, and then maybe I'll add more connections up here, and you'll come through here, and now we're back into that coral where the lake is in the middle with a big coral. Maybe we come out of here, we jump down here. There's a lot you can do. And I've probably just mapped out there, with our current walking speed and our current traversal mechanics, that's probably about 10 minutes of gameplay I've just shown there, with combat and a bunch of other stuff. And that we've probably only collected 5 or 6 shards in that time. It's going to be important that I now share with you all the thing you've all been looking at, and no one's commented on. In 6 devlogs, no one has commented on these, or asked about them, or asked about the walking speed, or anything like that in the game. Okay, welcome into my rig of the main character. Now let me just point something out to you that has been there since the very, very start of, well, the end of episode 1, let's say, the first devlog, because we actually made these and they're in there. And no one's really commented on them, but they are our jets, and they are going to let us get around and traverse the world much faster. They're going to be tethered to something similar to a stamina system. It's going to be called like an energy system, where your boots will recharge and you'll be able to carry on again. It's going to be pretty lengthy boosts though. You're going to be able to use them for quite a lot of time, and that's something we're going to implement in a future episode. But you're going to be able to hold down that left analog stick and boost forward, and you'll kind of hover up off the ground, and you'll have jets coming out of the back of your boots, and you'll blast forward through the world, and you'll be able to traverse around fairly quickly, not insanely fast, but probably about 3 to 4 times the speed we're currently going. This is going to cause a bunch of other issues with water and climbing and jumping and all of this other stuff, but I do want to try to mix these thrust boots with some sort of jump mechanic, so you could maybe have like a ramp or a system where you kind of get up enough speed and then you could do a larger jump. So that's something we're going to look at. So let's jump in-game as well, and I just want to show you the alien ruins here before we keep building on the block out here. We built these in Devlog 3, right? Or was it 2? Who knows? I think it was 3. And yeah, we built these, and we never got them in-game because we just built them really quickly in Blender and didn't have anything else to do. But here you can see and get an idea of the scale of these. Even like this though, you can't quite get an idea for how large they are. However, maybe like this, you kind of get an idea for just how big these alien ruins are. They are pretty humongous, and they're now overgrown with coral and seaweed and different grasses, and they've got moss on the floor. And again, all of this is just work in progress, very early, but you go up these steps, and this is how you would enter the very first dungeon of the game. And of course, a UI prompt would come up here saying you need 15 shards to open this door, and then you'd have to head out into the world and collect those shards. But you very well could get here with those 15 shards before that. And the first time you even got here, you could already have 15. That's very, very possible, depending on how much of an explorer you are and how much you want to explore this world. So I'm going to keep working on the block out, but I hope you've enjoyed the first little bit of this devlog. I'm really excited to keep pushing this now, especially as you all kind of have an idea of where this planet is going and what we're going to do with it. And yeah, I'm just really excited. And so excited that I decided to just start working on it and implementing it right then and there. I was just like, this is it, I'm going to do it. I just think it's such an exciting thing that I can finally talk about, because I've had it in the back of my head for a good, 6-7 weeks now. I've been thinking about adding this jet boot system in, and I animated a really quick animation, just looping animation of just moving forward. In the future, I'm going to add a blend space so that when you move left and right and backwards and stuff, you have slightly different angles and turns and stuff. But just to begin with, I just decided to animate a really simple move forward hover boot animation, and then after implementing it, it was pretty easy to implement. I spent a ton of time working on particle systems and making the particle systems look pretty cool. Probably too much time, if I'm totally honest with you, and then making them trigger when you're in the boost mode versus not. But it was a ton of fun, and honestly, it's one of my favorite things I've added to the game, because I can just zip around and do a load of really cool jumps and boosts. It's so much fun, but I won't just talk about how fun it is. Past Matt will as well. Past Matt here, and this has been a lot of fun to get working. I have really enjoyed getting this to work. There are, of course, a million bugs right now because I've just implemented this. For example, if I tried going to jump this, it's gonna break a lot of stuff. I can still climb up. But yeah, the game doesn't quite know what to do when I approach water or jumping or anything yet. There's gonna be so many places you're gonna want to explore and you want to go stop off at. But I feel like this makes so much sense now to get around, because I feel like if I had just done this episode as blocking out the actual first planet, people would be like, dude, this is insane, this is massive. Why are you doing it so large? But now you can see this is one of the big elements I wanted to surprise you all with, and hopefully you all like it, is that traversal is a huge part of this game. And as you go on in this game, traversal is going to become more and more and more important. It's so important to me that exploration is at the heart of this game. And if you want to zip around quickly to get places, you can. And this is now a mechanic I can actually add to puzzles. I can make it so that you have to be, having enough speed to then ramp up over something. So I should be bypassing those falling checks now, and there we go. We now just fall staying in this boost mode, which is probably what we want, but it does mean some other things get broken, but we can fix those along the way. So this is how this looks now. And it feels like there's a little bit of, lift off there. And maybe we could tweak it so that while we are boosting, we have less gravity or something like that, and we can coast for a lot longer. But this is going to be cool. When this whole planet is populated and there's so many things to do in this, what I'm calling a semi-open world, I think it's going to be amazing to boost along to these different places. And it's not going to feel like this running across the map is taking forever, because now we can boost. And I want these places, I want these planets to be huge, monstrous zones that make you really think, and you want to explore and navigate them. And there's going to be, lore hidden in places like data pads and areas where maybe you'll have to figure out what's happened in them. There's just going to be some sort of ruin or relic or something that I don't want to spoil yet, that you'll have to go and find. I just want to show, again, now that I've disabled some of those jumping things, so we can do some cool things on the ramps and such. This is what happens when I try to go into the water. It's a little bit different, but yeah, it's not perfect, and there's no stopping force, which maybe this is how it should be. If a player chooses that they want to boost into the ocean like this, they can. You lose so much control. There is no air control for when you're jumping. So, for example, if I do this, I can then not choose where to go in midair or anything, which is maybe something I'm going to have to look at as well. But yeah, if I'm over here and I'm coming across like this, yeah, it's not going to happen. You're going to have to slow down. I suppose one final thing, I did say I was going to go back to the blockout, but I'm just having so much fun with this. If you pull out your sword, you can keep the sword out while you're hovering around. You can even attack with it currently. Don't know if I'll keep that, because you could just do a ton of drive-bys. But I do think that's pretty cool. And if you wanted to, you could sheath the sword while boosting as well. I'll pull it back out again, and yeah, sheath that away. The only thing you can't do while boosting is roll. Rolling now almost seems redundant, because we have this, but you can always roll. And maybe I'll make it so that you roll a little bit faster than this. But you can't always boost. There is a limit to that. But you could just keep rolling forever. So hopefully people like this. The camera rotation, you'll notice, is pretty slow when you're walking. This is how I like the walking rotation. This is how it's always been since Devlog 2. But while you boost, the rotation is much faster, so it keeps up with you and your new speed and your new velocity. So yeah, anyway, now I will go back to working on the blockout and actually developing it a little bit more. But that has been so much fun to implement that. because it's an idea I've had since before Devlog 1, and now it's in the game. It's functional, barring a few bugs and things I want to debate and kind of fine-tune with you all over the next however many devlogs. But now I can talk about this huge element of the game that we haven't been able to show, which is movement traversal rather than just like environmental traversal, which is like all the stuff we've been building with the climbing and stuff. This is the big, huge thing that I really wanted to show you all, and now I finally can. So now that my excitement with that is dealt with, it's time to revisit the blockout and actually start building some of these areas and actually fleshing them out a little bit more so we can start getting a feel for them. The first area is what I'm dubbing the crash site. The crash site is the very, very first place that the player will spawn in the game. First time they'll ever have control over the character. So I want to do 3 simple things. I want the player to be able to move around and figure out the controls. I want the player to learn how to ledge climb and free climb. They're kind of the main 3 things I want a player to be able to do in this area. Again, it looks very similar to the other areas we've done. As you can see, I'm running around in it and populating and stuff in engine. So my goal for this area is to make it feel like you're climbing out of a pit somewhat. Only a very small little sort of sunken area, but that was the main goal, and I wanted to keep the vibe going from what I had made in the previous area, the prototype area with the lake and the big coral in the middle. I wanted to keep that aesthetic going, but now in a kind of a much more smaller condensed area, and how could we add to that? Obviously, I went through this, I added a lot of the same designs, as you can see, in the same principles that we have in that other area. But for a while I was thinking about adding more water to it and doing a bunch of other things. But the main thing I realized I wanted was a bunch of light streaming in from the area behind where you spawn. Almost like you rode this light in on your crash. So I ended up making some fake volumetrics and kind of tinkering around with that. I tried going in and making my own sort of shape to then apply the volumetrics to, but it didn't quite work. So I went back to just having it on planes and dealing with it like that, and it turned out pretty good. I'll let Past Matt show you around, but I think this turned out really well. And here we go. I did a little bit more work on the blockout, as you saw. This is going to be the crash site. Ignore this black noise texture here. This is just where the, I'll say it, it's an escape pod, is going to be. This is where you'll actually start playing the game after the first cinematic of the game. But yeah, ignore this text right now. I'm just doing that for reference sake. But here we are. This is where we can just, start learning some of the mechanics of the game. Movement. And then up here, this will be a climbable wall. Right now, I've just put the little red area over it, but there we go. And then this is a free climbable wall that we're going to put a vine texture on. And that's the main bit of the mechanics that we really want to teach people. And you can look back over where you crashed in, which I think this is a really cool site. I like this a lot. Maybe we'll have like other parts and stuff smoking off over in the distance there, but you'll definitely see smoke billowing up from down below. And then over here, I've currently got a little puddle right here. I don't know what I'm going to do with this yet. I'm not sure, but this is just something I added in. But this area is pretty undetailed. I mostly just focused on figuring out this area, because all I really wanted is someone to learn how to walk, ledge climb, and then free climb up, which is what that area does. I've also implemented a way of blocking when you can and can't use the jet boots, which is still my favorite thing. So let me show you that really quick. I made it into a blueprint, so I can show you really quick. I think I put it in, not the prototype level, planet 1. Yeah, here we go. So if you enter this, you can't use the jet boots. And if we come over here and we're boosting, you can almost just about make out this outline that I've just got in just so I can see it. It wouldn't be there in the actual game, but I've tried boosting in here, you get instantly stopped. Oh, I'd fixed this. And now I haven't fixed this. Okay. Basically, you're just not supposed to be able to boost in here, but I did fix it. And it's fixed, so now when you're in here, you can't boost anymore. And you just don't receive the can boost parameter at all. Oh, interestingly though, if you keep holding down the thumbstick or the button to boost, your energy doesn't come back. You have to let go. That is interesting. I wonder if I can fix that as well. That seems like something pretty easy to fix though. So I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, this is the start of building out our planet now. Getting all these different areas in place. And this is where you're going to start. And I really like how it looks actually. It's going to be cool. It's going to be cool to get it all working together. But I hope you've all enjoyed this devlog, because I felt like devlog 5 was quite, I guess, lower on the excitement scale, because it was just me implementing combat and not to full functionality yet. But yeah, I hope you all have enjoyed watching me work on this planet. I think I want to keep doing this for another devlog or two as well. And we might have to start using these can't boost areas just while we figure out where we do and don't want that. But I love this view as well. The first view you have as you step out of the crash site is of this huge gargantuan structure in the distance with a bunch of, which looks just like a bunch of cubes stacked on top of each other. But I might change the design a little bit. I definitely think I want to add some like flowing energy lines and stuff on it. So there's definitely going to be more of an impact here, but this is that initial view now. So now I'm just going to fly around, boost around for forever pretty much. And yeah, you can hold this and just keep going and going and going. Gonna roll around. So thank you all so much for watching this devlog. I hope you all have enjoyed it as much as me. This has been a really great one. I've had so much fun making it. I hope that's come across. I'm gonna go play Star Wars Jedi Survivor now. So I'll be back with more devlogs after that. Hopefully there won't be too much of a delay. But yeah, I'm gonna go enjoy a game myself after working on this for so long. And by so long, I mean 6 weeks. Thank you all again so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Welcome to a little post-devlog video. So I realized while I was rendering that devlog, I was just watching the final render of devlog 6, it was laggy while I was boosting around, but only at the end. And I can actually see it on my OBS screen right now that it is lagging. But on my actual monitor with the editor open, it isn't lagging. So I'm not sure why OBS is doing that. Let me have a go up here in this area again. This was causing some lag, wasn't it, when I was up here? So this is with a different encoder now. And I think OBS is actually a little bit happier now. I think. Anyway, it seems a little bit smoother. And one final test here. I've just put it back over to my other encoder, and it is lagging again. So it is the encoder that's causing this lag, which is strange. Well, hopefully we're happy with this quality, because this seems to be the best way to now capture with OBS, because for some reason my other encoder was lagging, but everything is working. And if you've stuck around this long, thank you very much. I just wanted to show that it definitely wasn't the game lagging, it was the encoder. But I can now move on to devlog 7 and start working on that. Thank you for watching.